Hi, I'm Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the Senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. Welcome to this week's edition of Kibbitzing with Kagan, brief conversations with people I find fascinating. Today's very special guest is Dr. Christy Collins, the Director of Maryland's 911 Board. Dr. Collins, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Thank you, Senator.
So this is an area more than almost anything else where I spend a lot of time. And so I know how critically important your work is. And so this is a real opportunity to share and educate. And so I have a million questions to educate folks about what we do and what you do in 911. But let's start with your background because it's really interesting and deep and diverse. So you got an associate's degree at Fayetteville Tech, then got your undergrad at Franklin University, your master's in Salisbury, and then a doctorate in education at Liberty University. And you have background in military at the Department of Health. Your husband is the assistant adjutant general, and you have four kids, and now you're director of the 911 board. So just in a minute or two, tell us about your childhood, your trajectory, and what brought you here. It's quite the interesting journey.
It is indeed. And again, thank you for having me. So yeah, it is an interesting journey, but it really has, it's definitely an example of what has brought me here today, serving. It's something I have felt passionate about since I was a young child in a small town in West Virginia.
Hmm.
And then I went off to college, like most young adults do. And I met my husband over 22 years ago in North
Right.
Carolina.
Hmm.
And so the rest is kind of history at that point that molded the rest of my career that I always know I wanted to serve. I truly enjoy helping others and being a part of something bigger than myself. And so, yeah, that's and you did very well at summarizing my history. To not only was I a federal employee at one point, but I actually, true story, I worked in Aberdeen Proving Grounds, but I actually worked for the medical command in Europe. So that was always a fascinating thing. But with this great experience comes great diversity and the ability to help others and reach the broad spectrum of the 911 community, which I'm a part of now.
Yes. So let's start. Folks who have no idea what the 911 board is. What is it? Why is it important? It has over $100 million that it distributes. Give an idea, paint the picture if you would.
Absolutely. So the Maryland 911 Board is a governor appointed diverse team of subject matter experts. These subject matter experts, there's 24,
Mhm.
that come together once a month. I would say more than that, seeing behind the scenes at the enormous amount of attention that goes into those once a month meetings. But they come together to create a 911 system statewide that will ensure effective, innovative emergency response system through leadership, education, collaboration with partners and community stakeholders.
And technology.
And technology, absolutely. NextGen
So
911.
So let's start there. Next generation 911. It's expensive, it's important, it's high tech, it's faster, better, all that. Explain to someone who has no idea. What is it? Why is it important?
Absolutely. So the idea behind this was to replace the analog system that we're all very familiar with.
Analog being,
Analog being the old rotary dial type phone system where you call and it's routed to the 911 public safety answering point, also
landlines,
known as
are
PT.
landline phones. So not just
Correct.
rotary dials. It can be push button, but it's basically landline versus wireless.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So in this new landscape, it uses the digital system
Yes.
that uses the World Wide Web, the internet,
Mhm.
to improve the 911 response system.
Yes.
And currently in the state of Maryland, we have 23 out of 24 who have made that transition.
Yep.
With the last one hoping to make that transition in March or April of this year, 2025.
And the reason for their delay?
It was a cause and effect. It wasn't of any fault of their own. It just so happens that some of these older systems, when you start to transition, they expire. They're not able to keep up.
Yep.
So it became a holistic project.
Yep. Okay. And is that what would someone calling 911 experience as a difference with NextGen?
Absolutely. So with NextGen, some of the enabling features allow a person, yes, to call, but also text, provide video, as well as the integration of GIS, geographic
Geographic
information
information system.
systems.
Good for you. And that's
Yeah.
finding somebody. So,
Right, to really identify the exact location that they're
mhm.
calling from.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the examples I always give is if you're downtown Baltimore or Annapolis, you may not know exactly where you are, and the first thing you would do is look up and see a street sign.
Yes.
Well, that doesn't really pinpoint exactly where you are, so that's where that comes into.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so many tragic stories of I'm at the hospital, but which entrance or which street corner or or I'm at the lake or at in the Potomac River. I mean, yeah, disasters. What is the biggest fear or biggest challenge with next generation 911?
Well, so my recent inspections, I often ask this because one of the things that I want to know is after you made the transition,
Yes.
what have you experienced?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that the different centers have shared with me is some of the staff doesn't really want to see the video portion. It may cause some additional traumatic stress. The idea is if they wanted to see that, then they would have become an EMT or a
Mm-hmm.
paramedic. The other thing that they have brought to my attention is some of the CAD systems wasn't able.
Computer aided dispatch system.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Computer aided dispatch wasn't able to support it, so they had to upgrade. And again, in that last
Yes.
public safety answering point that hasn't made that transition yet, that was the case with them. Is as they're starting to transition, some of those programs also need to be updated.
So you have an annual inspection at each of the 24 911 centers, the public safety answering points, but let's just call them 911 centers. It's where the calls, texts, and videos come in and where the dispatching happens. The police, fire, and paramedics are sent. So what is it that you're looking for? And I've got a couple other questions about the inspections.
One of the biggest things that we look for when we go out is what have we purchased that has supported this 911 center? We
Yes.
like to see the current things that have been approved or was purchased, whether it be a software, a program, sometimes some equipment for the quiet room.
Mhm.
So those are one of the main things we want. And we want to be a partner with them, not so much in a regulatory point of view, but we want to be a partner to really identify what are the needs at the county level that we're not seeing, so we can help support that.
Perfect. That's a great answer. So as you know, I visited my 24th and final 911 center, and I was so thrilled that you were able to join us to celebrate. I went to Calvert County for my last one, and they were so welcoming. Other than the size, what would you say is the biggest differential among the 24 jurisdictions? Obviously, smaller counties, fewer calls, fewer people under the headsets, fewer 911 specialists versus the larger ones. What else would you describe as being different?
Definitely the geographical location plays a huge part in how that particular center or secondary or backup centers
Yes,
are, the organizational structure behind that plays a huge part. There's no two counties, even though they're neighboring, are the same.
yes,
And so we treat them as individuals, even though there is some common characteristics. I think that is probably one of the biggest things that really mold that particular county's 911 center.
yes. And when you say location, Yes, it's fascinating how it's seen, and when you talk about the backup center or the secondary. So during COVID, this was especially important, whether it was putting half the 911 specialists in each location to give them more physical distance, or if there's an outage or a problem, there's always another location because you never want to call 911 and not have someone answer. Talk about how the 911 board funds both the primary and the secondary or backup as well, and make sure that they are both fully functioning at all times or have the
Absolutely.
capacity.
So, and you actually gave a great example there. Is that the primary PSAP, there's 24 primary PSAPs. So the idea is that all of the secondary or backup centers are filtered through the primary PSAP.
Yes.
So how we support them, as long as they are the 911 center, or they're contributing something to the public safety answering point, that community,
Mm-hmm.
everything's filtered through them, and it becomes we've done this for you. Ideally want it to mirror your primary.
Yes.
Otherwise, the redundancy isn't going to be of much help in the case of any kind of disasters, natural disasters.
So let's do a couple of moments here on should you consider, you, someone watching or listening, consider working under the headset as a 911 specialist. It's a supremely important job, but a very small fraction of us would be qualified or have the capacity to do it. Why don't you talk about recruitment and training and retention of these super important people who are usually invisible?
Absolutely, and we're still learning. As of today, the legislation passed last year covered the 911 specialist recruitment and retention work group, which I know the both of us serve on.
Yes.
It's so important that we identify not from just the recruitment point of view, but the retention.
Yep.
One of the things that I have that has been shared with me when I go out on inspections is that it takes quite a long time to get them on their own under the headset.
Yep.
It can range depending on that specific center standards and staffing needs. It can take anywhere from a year to 3 years. That's quite a long time for somebody's actually released. So I understand that. I think that if an individual is considering this as a career, something to think about is the holistic parts of this is how will you, because there's, and of course the centers have done very well at providing some aptitude testing and things of that to help you identify if this is the right career for you.
Yes.
But I would suggest that when you're going in and say you are accepted, is resilience.
Yes.
Resilience, and please speak up. As soon as you mention anything or you need help, you'll be surprised that everybody else is feeling the same way in that
Yes.
center. And that's what I hope that we can provide as a state board to ease the tension of some of that stress.
We have made access to mental health care easier and more confidential. We've got to support these courageous women and men under the headsets who save lives and property every day with their work. How accurately do you think 911 specialists are portrayed in the media and on TV shows?
I think I like that the recognition is there,
Mm-hmm.
that this exists and
Mm-hmm.
this is the actual position that exists. I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily agree with the heroic. I mean, that would be great if it's all heroic, but in some cases it's not.
Okay.
It's sad. And it's okay to be sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to know that you did as you know what you were doing and you followed everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the part I have trouble with, is that I always tell my staff that's one of the biggest things that we do is we go out. I don't want them to see us as an email. I want them to see us as people as we see them, and get out into the public safety answering points to really understand what their position filters into.
Yes. Have you ever spent any time under the headset? at a 911 center?
Okay, so I have not as a 911 representative,
Specialist.
but in my youth,
Yes.
I was a cable troubleshooter for a
Okay.
cable company. And so, yes, I wore the headset, and they were long hours, and just wearing those headsets. And I get it. It just, yeah.
When I think technology has probably helped on the large headset things. I mean, they're better now. Such a large percentage of calls coming into 911 are not emergencies.
Mhm.
So speak briefly, if you would, about 988, the suicide and mental health crisis hotline, and how 911 is partnering there. Because we have legislation, as you know, and people need to be more aware of 988.
Absolutely. So you mentioned 311,
Yeah,
which
I'm
those are
gonna
the
get to that.
non-emergent, the
I was,
not emergent. That's what I say is, if you have, your mailbox or something, or maybe a pothole, things like that, that you can reach out to your local police, fire, city, county. 988 is a mental health and substance use if you have an emergency hotline. But one of the key things that you mentioned during the legislation that we're trying to hopefully that goes through is being able to use the trust fund for our 911 specialists to have that transition.
mhm,
Our first responders
mhm.
are the first people that is just identifiable. 911, you have a problem, okay, 911. So
Yes,
you may receive that person that does have a substance abuse concern, or maybe a suicidal ideation. How do they do that transfer either over to the hotline or to an in-house clinician, which some
yes.
of our counties do have?
Hmm.
How can we help provide them that transition to where they don't lose that individual in the transfer of a call if necessary?
Yes.
At the board, we meet with behavioral health administrators, MDH, on a monthly basis
Maryland
to
Department of
help
Health.
identify areas that we can bridge that gap.
Hmm. So that's 988. You got ahead of me a little on 311. So 311 is where can I get a flu shot, and what day is my recycling getting picked up? And it's non-emergency, non-government. It's not often police, fire, and paramedics. It's really sort of just community service, but they don't know whom to call,
Mhm.
or they don't have access to the internet, or they got turned in circles around or whatever. Um, how helpful is that in the 6 counties that have 311 now, as we are hopefully working to roll it out statewide?
So I will be honest, as far as the extent that I am familiar with 311 is through the public safety answering points that
Yes,
often will receive those calls, because that's an identifiable number,
yeah,
and then they're routed. I'm anxious to see where that goes moving forward. Is that something that's going to be able to be present in a 911 center, or more importantly, how can we get those calls so that we don't clog up our 911
100%.
centers?
No, that is not the plan. That is not the plan. Let's shift to back to technology. Artificial intelligence is more ever present. There are some folks who are wondering as to whether that would be useful in our 911 centers. Any thoughts about that? And are you seeing some contracts and proposals to implement that in our 911 centers?
So it's just a little bit, just like the little tiptoe. I am really excited to see where this goes, because I would like to say I equate this to a similar, as we talked about earlier, GIS, or that integration. I'm curious where this will be inserted, and how will it benefit, or how will it impact the 911
Yes.
community. And it's slowly emerging into the 911 community. So we haven't really experienced anything yet,
Hmm.
but there is some projects on the horizon. And more importantly, I can't wait to see what the studies or the
Yeah.
feedback we receive from those projects.
Yes. Yes. Good. Well, let's go back to GIS, the Geographic Information Systems. How good are they now? So it used to be latitude and longitude, but then so x-axis, y-axis, and then there's been progress towards the z-axis, which is height. So if you're in a hotel room or in a hotel or an office building, it matters. What floor you're on, not just which building you're in. And I have to tell the quick story that just horrifies me, which is of the three people who died in my district when 911 failed, which is what initiated the 11 years I have spent on 911 issues. One of them called 911 from one of the biggest employers in my district and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. And the paramedics came and they searched every office of every floor of building one, and the cleaning crew found his dead body 10 hours later in building three. And so it's just that the technology wasn't quite there to identify which building he was in. And then obviously it matters to get in a timely manner which floor he was on and all that. So how much closer are we to getting it really accurately done?
Right, so I think where the emerging advancements going to be is our indoor mapping. Those are some things, as you know, there was legislation that passed last year for
Mhm.
school indoor mapping, which I truly believe, and we've had a couple projects while haven't been approved yet. You can see that that's where the thought process is
Mhm.
being able to also provide that indoor mapping to where, like you said, that if there's something that comes in, they can actually, and it, from my understanding, I've seen a couple shows where it's like an apparatus and they go through and they do the indoor mapping
Hmm.
to where they can target specifically the door, the hallway, very targeted area.
That's great, especially, God forbid, in these too frequent school shootings. And yeah.
Mm, absolutely.
Um, uh, attacks, cyber attacks, and our 911 centers. As you know, I've been bringing legislation. I am told that maybe this year we will be moving it. There need to be consequences, penalties for trying and then for succeeding at messing with a 911 center. Talk about cyber attacks and cybersecurity, because that's a big focus, I know, in our efforts.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that we did just complete this past Friday was we had a statewide cybersecurity tabletop exercise
Mhm.
where all the jurisdictions were given an opportunity to come and learn from each other and do some scenarios just to kind of play out what would you do, how would you do, what would you react, and be able to work through that. It was an all-day exercise. It was wildly popular with amongst the
Yeah.
group, and everybody just really. It was interesting is that some of the cities and the larger counties that may have already experienced this was able to learn from the smaller counties and understand what resources do you have, how can we talk, how can we collaborate. So it's more of taking a proactive approach and identifying these now
Yes.
prior to being reactive later.
Amazing. Good for you. Thank you for
Mhm.
that. So you
Mhm.
were talking about our 24 counties sort of cross-pollinating and learning from each other. Do you, or does Maryland learn from other states at national conferences? What's something that people have learned from us, or what have we learned from other states?
Absolutely. So the board chair and I attend twice a year the National Association Administrators, 911 Administrators, NASNA, also known as
Mhm.
NASNA,
Mhm.
where we collaborate with all of the other states, where we come together and we talk about this. We have a state report out where we say where we are, what we're learning about. It's very interesting to see how their landscape is for their state landscape is compared to others, as well as our region. I work closely with Virginia, Maryland, DC, Pennsylvania. We just cross collaborate, especially since we have so many neighboring counties
Yes.
that often are affected by some sort of routing or calls or things like that. So we work very closely with all of our jurisdictions and our surrounding states.
So let's talk briefly about interconnectivity because we have had national stories and crises on September 11th and other times like that where you know Maryland and Virginia's systems couldn't talk to each other, or we need to make sure that DC, Maryland, and Virginia are all interconnected, and yet we might be using different vendors, different technologies. How well has that been going lately?
Well, it's going to be going very well soon because this is a future, if you will, project that is coming that I am proud to say at the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. We have secured a statewide interoperability coordinator who will be coming, also known as SWIC,
Oh my.
who will
And
be coming on. And that is exactly what we're targeting towards a strategic plan to work across and build partnerships across governmental levels to enable interoperable public safety communications and emergency management of the like.
so if you call 911 and you're near a county line and the wrong 911 center picks up for the location of your emergency, they're going to be able to communicate and transfer, and it will all be seamless, and you will get the help you need. Correct?
Right, correct. And more importantly, that overall strategic plan will be able to help identify those that have mainly worked in a silo and cross departmental as opposed to just staying within their own little platform.
Yes, yes. I have a couple more questions and then we'll start to wrap up, but I have a million things, obviously.
Okay.
The new administration, what I call the Trump-Musk administration, has already threatened FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. There are threats of enormous budget cuts, and obviously money helps pay for the technology and the people and the services. Talk about what has happened so far in these early weeks and what you are hearing about or seeing that could be forthcoming.
Absolutely. So within the Maryland 911 board, our money is in a trust fund. So
Mhm.
it's solvent and
Yes,
restricted to
yes.
just a pass through for the counties and those special projects. We have a state fee that is set aside that we take care of in order to provide that special products.
And that
So
was in, I
current
have to give a shout out to Carl Henn, my friend who died, who inspired my work. And that legislation set up a serious lockbox of nobody gets their paws on a dime if it's not going to be spent exactly precisely on 911 services.
Absolutely. And the FCC has reinforced this through fee diversion.
The Federal
To
Communications
mhm,
Commission.
yes, yeah. So yeah. So right now we're okay. And like I said, it would be very hard to interrupt any of our services.
Good. So there have been some states that take money out of 911 and spend it on healthcare or transportation or other things. And so there has been conversation about withholding federal funding and being punitive about it. If you have ever spent any 911 money for something else, you're not eligible for this pot of money or something. So I don't know whether there's a status of that, but so far, so good then.
So far, so good. Like I said, we remain solvent and focused on our mission to assist the Maryland community.
Good. So the money that you've got in this trust fund that is only for 911, talk about how the 24 member board evaluates the proposals. Does it ever get political? I'll vote for yours if you'll vote for mine. Is it ever tough? What makes a contract or a proposal controversial?
So I think the emerging technology ones that don't have any kind of historical success that would bring it to light amongst the 24 member board. But like I said, we have such very important group of subject matter experts that really come together and ask the tough questions. You know, the county presents, sometimes the vendor comes with them. So if there's any questions, they can ask right there on the spot. It's truly evaluated before, during, and then after to make sure that it is meeting the needs for that specific county.
And sometimes one county tries a new technology, and then after others see that it works or doesn't work so well, they might roll it out or not, and others can benefit from kind of a pilot project, right?
Absolutely. As in the case where I'm sure you're familiar with cardio, pulmonary resuscitation,
That was my
CPR.
bill.
That was a very good pilot
Yes.
program that was initiated, and then others.
Yes.
It's wildly popular and very
Yes.
successful.
Yes, our friend Tony Rose started it in Charles County,
Mm-hmm.
and it saved lives. The data was there, and so we sponsored a law that allowed money to be made available for CPR training for our 911 specialists to save lives through the phone. It's not something that they can do themselves, but they can talk the person calling into how to save their loved one's life or colleague's life. Last question before we shift to the Fast Five. What's it like when you need to call 911? Because I can tell you, for me, I get terrified because I know exactly what the implications are, and I tend to be really reluctant to call. What is it like for you when you're immersed in this all the time?
The same. What goes through my mind is the pragmatic approach is, what do I need to tell them so they don't need to ask me? How can I assist in leading them before I get on there? I know that they're gonna touch point on this and this. What can I do? How can I be of support to the 911 specialist, even
Yeah.
though it's my emergency?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the exact same thing.
Yes. Oh my God. It's right. Is there anything we didn't cover that you'd like to mention before we start to wrap up?
Let's see. No, I think besides professional development, I just want to highlight this, especially for our 911 specialist supervisors. I think this is an ongoing project that we really need to continue to hone, is provide that professional development. Because I really think that after they've gone through this intense training and now they're on the headset, they may have made supervisor, but what's next to keep them engaged? I
Yes.
think that is another part that we need to keep on the horizon and make sure that we're supporting.
Yes. And I'm so glad that you and I are working together on this 911 specialist work group. I have to give a shout out to my colleague, Senator Mary Beth Carrozza, who sponsored the legislation and is on the work group, as well as delegates Teresa Riley and Jamila Woods, and then all the other people on the commission on that work group who are going to be bringing their expertise and insights. Hopefully, we will come up with some good tools for increasing quality of life, recruitment, training, retention, and all that. But Dr. Christy Collins, Executive Director of Maryland's 911 Board, it is time for your Fast Five. 5 quick questions with 5 quick answers to let folks get to know you a little better. I'm starting off with one of my favorites. Question number 1, what is your favorite junk food?
Oh, I'm gonna say chocolate. Anything
Okay.
chocolate. I know that's so typical, but it really is. Anything chocolate, and yeah,
Dark or milk or white?
dark,
Yeah.
dark. Yeah, dark
See,
chocolate.
that's always the right answer, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, Question number 2. 911 is a place about adrenaline and emergency. And yet you have to try to stay calm all the time. What gets your adrenaline pumping?
People that purposely try to hurt others or
Mm,
go out of their way to hurt others. I would say unintentionally, but I still think it's a little bit of intentional subconsciously. So
yeah,
I think that really gets me passionate about just trying to give those people that don't normally have a voice a voice.
that's good. I like that. Question number 3. What's a favorite show you've binged watched recently?
Mm, Madlock.
Okay, back in the
That is,
day.
yeah, it's Kathy Bates, the
Oh,
latest with the Kathy Bates. She's the new Madlock, and yeah, it's
oh,
awful. Yeah,
okay. We're not talking Andy
yeah.
Griffin.
No, not Andy Griffin. No, it's
Okay.
Kathy Bates. It's a more well, it's similar to the same format that he would do, but she's trying to get some sort of satisfaction or some sort of justification for her daughter's death
Oh, wow.
through the
Okay.
pharmaceutical company. So yeah, she plays a lawyer.
Okay. On a happier note, question number 4, what is your favorite family tradition?
My favorite family tradition definitely has to be going to the beach. Last year we lost my mother-in-law, and this was like her
Yeah.
biggest thing. And she had a beach home. We called it All in a Lifetime, and we'd always meet down there in Nags Head. And so
Right.
that was by far my favorite tradition.
Lovely. I'm sorry
And
for your loss.
I thank you, but she made it very known that we must continue. So we
Yes.
are doing so.
Fantastic. So question number 5, the last question. Dr. Christy Collins, Executive Director of Maryland's 911 Board. What is your hidden secret superpower? What is a skill or talent you have, something you're really good at that most folks can't do?
Mm, I'm going to say puzzles, not tabletop puzzles, of course, but I'm talking more like puzzles, brain teasers, riddles. Case in point, it's just it's kind of silly, but my family, whenever we go on vacation or we're ready to go anywhere, we go to pack up the vehicle. They lay out all their stuff, and then I kind of like put it together. So I guess it's one of those, and it fits well into my military spouse background, but
Right.
also as an executive director, seeing all your resources before you and how can they fit together to fit the needs of what we need to happen.
Wow. You can come over to my office anytime and help
I
with all
know
of that.
it's a little OCD too, so
Well, but it's practical and it's
yes.
valuable. So, well, thank you for your time. Thank you for taking time to kibitz, and thank you for all that you do to make Maryland safer in times of crisis.
Thank you, Senator, for everything you do to support us. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. I'll look forward to seeing you very soon. Stay well. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.